The BL 5.5-inch gun was a British artillery gun introduced during the middle of the Second World War to equip medium batteries. History. In January 1939, a specification was issued for a gun to replace the 6-inch 2600 weight howitzers in use with most medium batteries. The first units were equipped in UK in the summer of 1941 and in North Africa a year later. 20 guns equipped British and Free French batteries at El Alamein. Subsequently it also equipped Canadian, Australian, South African, Polish and Indian regiments, and after the war, it was also used by New Zealand. In the Second World War the normal organisation was a regiment of 16 guns organised into 2 batteries. The 5.5 was retained in service after the war. It was used by the Royal Artillery on operations in Korea, South Arabia and Borneo. It was probably used by the Indian Army in wars against Pakistan, and was used by the Pakistan Army against India in the mountains of Kashmir during the Kargil War of 1999. The South African Defence Force used it extensively in the early stages of the South African Border War, including Operation Savannah, calling it their G2. Approximately 72 are still held in reserve by the South African Army. In British post-war service it also replaced the BL 4.5-inch medium field gun. When 6-gun batteries were introduced in the late 1950s, medium regiments had 18 guns and the 3rd battery in each field regiment was equipped with 5.5-inch guns instead of 25-pounder guns. It remained in UK service with Territorial Army regiments until 1980 and in Australian service until replaced by M198 in about 1984. The UK replacement for 5.5-inch was the FH-70 155mm towed howitzer in service as L121. The last 5.5 rounds were fired in the UK in 1995. In use, the 5.5 was generally towed by the AEC Matador artillery tractor. For the 1950s in British service, the 5.5 was typically towed by an AEC militant Mk1 6x6 truck and subsequently the FV1103 Leyland Martian 6x6 medium artillery tractor. All 5.5 guns were manufactured in the UK. Description: there were 4 marks of 5.5-inch ordnance, although only 3 and, after World War II, 4 entered service, and the differences were only minor. There were 2 marks of carriage where the differences were greater use of welding and less of riveting. The carriages were identical to those used with ordnance BL 4.5-inch Mark Chapter 2. No limber was ever used and the gun fired with its wheels in contact with the ground. During World War II, the place locks and AC slide boxes used with 0.5-inch tubes were replaced by PK locks and Y slide boxes using 0.303-inch tubes. It used one-man laying and had probit pattern calibrating sights. The dial sight was initially the number 7 but was gradually replaced by the number 9. In the 1960s, sights were converted from degrees, minutes and yards to mils and meters. There was no anti-tank telescope. Late in the war, a sight adapter was introduced to permit upper register fire when the wheels were raised significantly above the level of the spades. The normal gun detachment was 10 men. Ammunition. Initially 5.5-inch fired a 100-pound shell and 4 charges in 2 cartridges, giving a maximum range table MV of 1,675 feet per second and 16,200 yards. In 1944 an 82-pound shell was introduced along with charge super, giving a maximum range table powerful MV of 1,950 feet per second and 18,100 yards. The lighter shell contained 1.5 pounds more and gradually replaced the heavier shell. In addition to He, there were several chemical and colored smoke shells. Colored flare was developed. After the war, only He was used. The normal He fuse was number 117. In late 1944 a VT-fused T-100 became available. Variants. No variants entered service, although UK developed two self-propelled versions to prototype stage. The first in 1945 used the Crusader gun tractor. It was a turretless design with no casemate. The second, FV-3805, in the 1950s used a Centurion tank carriage, the gun being in a barbette mounting in a fully enclosed casemate.